think you manifest. So get ready to rise, cause we about to be the best. Gotta switch it up, gotta break the old habits. Get your mind right, turn your dreams into habits. No negative vibes, only positive.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Cafe podcast. It's your host, Devin Gonzalez, and today we have an extraordinary guest with us. She is an award-winning author. She is a playwright, a freelance writer, as well as a speaker. Some of the things that she's accomplished in her career thus far: she's co-authored Where the War Ends, which is a combat veteran's 2,700-mile journey to heal, and that actually has a Forward Indies Book of the Year Silver Award winner, as well as she has a book coming out, right, a debut, The 23rd Hero, and that's actually a 2024 Reader's Choice Award, and that's a bronze winner right there, and that's actually going to be released in August. Some of her publications could be seen in the New York Times, Insider, Military Times, Mamma Mia, Coffeelicious, and Indeed Design. And some of the plays that she's actually produced could have been seen in New York, Los Angeles, and Miami, so some big cities right there. So with that being said, I'm excited to introduce Rebecca. Thank you so much for coming on today, and let's dive into, what you've accomplished thus far. It's amazing. You have an amazing career thus far. But welcome to the Mindset Cafe.
Thank you so much for having me, Devin. I'm super excited to be here.
No, of course. Well, let's dive in. I want to pick your brain right away. This is the Mindset Cafe, right? This is for entrepreneurs. This is for just individuals on their personal, growth journey. But how did you get started in, writing?
I never wanted to be a writer. And maybe that's why it's very funny that I ended up writing, because in my former life, I was an actor. I went to school for theater. All I wanted to do from the time I was a little kid was be an actor. I was obsessed. I was doing my first play when I was 4 years old. I was begging my parents, let's move to Hollywood, please, please, please. And so I went to school. I went out to Los Angeles. I was, hustling, auditioning, doing my thing. And I remember I met this really successful screenwriter, and we were chatting, and she's like, you should get into writing. Why aren't you writing? And I was so insulted. I was like, writing is what you do when you fail at acting. That's how, honestly, that was my mindset, which is insane. And so I resisted it for a long time. And when I finally sort of just went with the flow and I sort of accepted my fate, I guess, everything started opening up for me. And it was clear to me, obviously, I should have been doing this all along. And I wish I had been doing it all along.
No, that's awesome. What, in your opinion, what do you think led them to kind of say that?
I think they probably looked at me. I was, I moved out to Los Angeles in my mid-20s, which, that's like, you might as well be 95 years old when you're in Hollywood. It's changing now, but back then it was like, you got to be out there when you're 11, 12, 13 and coming up and making connections and building your reel and working from the time you're very young in order to be, to have built the relationships you need to build. So I came out, I wasn't thin. I wasn't gorgeous. I was this Midwestern white, brown hair. There was 10,000 of me everywhere I looked. So I think she probably looked at me and said, it's going to be hard for you. It's going to be really hard for you. Maybe you need to think about making your own work and sort of creating your own destiny a little bit, instead of, when you're acting, it's really tough because you're really dependent on someone else saying yes. And what I like about writing is no one can stop me. They might not publish me, but no one can stop me from writing. It's something that I can do on my own, and I don't need anyone's permission.
No, that's awesome to hear. But I think personally, just from the way you speak and the energy that you have, I personally think that, they might have said it because they saw your creative side, right? Because to be a writer, you have to have a creative gene, and that's not natural for everyone, right? So to say that, there's, 1,000 of you, it's like you're still an independent, unique person, and there's ways that, you could have separated yourself from the crowd. But I think the real spark probably came from seeing you act and realizing that you have more of a creative gene than, you were led to believe.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it can be, it's difficult when you're an actor too, because you don't get to write the script. I mean, well, sometimes people do, but like for the most part, you're coming in and you have this role and it already is all set and exists, and you have to listen to the director and help bring out their vision and everything. So in a certain way, it's kind of limiting compared
Right.
to, creating your own world as a writer writing fiction.
No, I definitely agree. It's one of those things where being a writer, it's very similar to, starting a business, right? You may work for someone else, right? Just like you are acting someone else's, script, but then you see things that it should be in your own mind. You may not say it out loud, but that right there kind of separates you, because most people just follow the script. They just do what they're told. But then you think of people like Sylvester Stallone, where, he got turned down, so many times that he ended up just writing his own stuff. And then all of a sudden, Rocky is a classic,
Yeah.
Rambo's a classic. So I think that, it's because even just when you're speaking right now, you do have an outgoing, like energetic, side to you, that creative part was just itching to get out. So, I mean, that's awesome that, you at least accepted the information and took it and tried. And I mean, look at you now, right?
Yeah. It's funny too that you say it's when you're doing that beautiful introduction. It's funny to hear all that, because I don't think I think of myself that way when you're, thinking of the successful and awards and everything. But I had lunch over the weekend with a teacher of mine she's the author of 5 novels. She's a Pulitzer finalist. She's won the National Book Award. And it's so interesting because I think you really have to kind of define success for yourself, because there's always going to be someone who has more or more successful than you. And so, yeah, I'm still working on that to sort of let where I am be good for now and let it be enough.
No, I think that's a common thing with most people. I mean, I'm guilty of that as well. Me and my business partner are launching a fitness franchise, and, we're basically newer in the game. And then you look at these other franchises and how they're killing it. It's like, man, like there's always going to be that person that is above you, but you have to also realize like how far you've came in the last 5 years, the last 10 years, and just maybe even the last year. And sometimes you got to take that step back and be like, wow, I am doing big things and I am moving fast. I know I need to live in the moment certain times, but as, a writer, as an entrepreneur, it's one of those things where we focus on what's next. It's sometimes it's hard to take a step back and be like, wow, like I need to stop being so hard on myself. What inspired you to write The 23rd Hero?
Okay, a little bit of a sad story, but I'll bring us up in the end. It'll be
All right.
helpful in the end. So I was going through a divorce. I was on my own with 2 really young kids, like a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, 2 little boys. I didn't know it at the time, but my youngest is autistic and he has lots of different challenges. And I was working full time. It was a dark time. I felt really alone. It was like right before the pandemic too. And then so that hit, and I needed an escape. I needed something to take me out of my life, because it was almost like unbearable. And I wasn't finding like I tried, I'm drinking a bottle of wine every night. That just makes me feel worse. And then I'm trying to like binge watch. Maybe I can watch TV to get my mind off of it. And that wasn't working for me. And so I started writing to create a world that was the opposite of my own world. So I have this, a bitter divorce. And so on the page, I'm creating this wonderful love story, like my perfect, passionate, fantastic love story. I have, I'm a single parent. And so my characters don't have kids yet, that kind of a thing. So I was just sort of giving myself this outlet, this escape. That's all it was at first. I never set out to write a novel. I had no business writing a novel. I had never written on fiction in my life, not even a short story. So I had no idea what I was doing. I just wanted to not hurt.
Okay. I mean, that's sometimes that need of change, or that need of just getting out of your own head, can lead to amazing things. So was that step for you writing your own book? That was after you had co-authored, the other book. So when you wrote that book, was it more comfortable co-authoring it, or was it, just someone else was going to write the book and you got asked to be on it? How did that process work?
Yeah, it's really interesting going from one to the other. The memoirs, actually, I wrote it with my brother. So it's his story. He had the great story, the great true story. It's sort of a combat veteran coming back from serving in Iraq. and really struggling to come back to civilian life. And it's his journey, literally his 2,700-mile journey. He walked across the country to help himself heal. And so we worked on that together. But it's kind of like what we talked about before. It was his story. And so I loved working on it with him, and I loved, doing that for him. But there's not much. Memoirs, like what happened is what happened, and all you can kind of play around with is sort of the structure and the order of events and everything. But anyway, the novel was a chance to do whatever I wanted. I wasn't constrained by someone else's story or someone else's voice. It could be anything, and that can be intimidating even sometimes when, it could be absolutely anything. But for me, it was exciting. I write as part of my day job. I'm writing everywhere, but most of the writing I do for work it has to be a certain way for someone else. And so this kind of work, the fiction, was just, no one can tell me what to do.
No, I mean, that's huge. And that's a big step. And, I commend you for that step and that essentially leap, because writing someone else's story, or writing, what someone else tells you to do with, the freelance writing and stuff, you only have a certain zone of creativeness that you can kind of explore. But when you do have basically an empty sandbox and you can create anything, it seems like it would be, easier, but at the same time, you can get in your own head because you're like, it could be anything, but is this what people are going to like? Is this, so you start being really like hard on yourself as well. And so that's a scary jump, but that's awesome that you took it. And I applaud you for that. With writing your book, and you've, written plays and stuff, what was that mindset shift, or what is that perspective change that you have to be able to write one or the other, because the structures are so different, at least in my opinion, I would think.
Yeah, they're definitely different form. I actually worked on a play because I was pitching my novel. I was trying to sell the novel, and that process publishing is just slow as molasses. So it can take, your months, 6 months, 9 months. I mean, to me, it just feels like an eternity. And I wanted to distract myself with something different. Well, it's funny. What I noticed though, is that the forms are different. Like in a play, a place like a script is not the finished product, because their actors are going to bring their interpretations, directors, lighting, sound. It's almost more like you're giving a bit of an outline, and then someone's going to it's very collaborative. They're going to pick up your script and they're going to interpret, and they're going to layer on their thinking to it, it's beautiful. It's lovely. It does make me appreciate writing fiction though, because there's, again, more control. I guess I'm a little bit of a control freak. But, you write a line in a script and the actor can say it in a way you never intended. Or the producer might hire actors who were nothing like what you imagined, that sort of a thing. And sometimes it can be better than what you imagined, which is great. But the fiction is just a great way it is an end in itself. That book that's the finished product. And yeah, you have a little bit more control as a writer, I think.
No, that's awesome. I didn't even think about that, but I think that would stress me out personally. If I was writing like a play, or even like a screenplay or something, because like you said, the actor can change up the wording or say it, like just the tone of your voice and how you say something can change the meaning of a sentence or a line. And if that's not the way you intended it, it could be kind of, stressful, but at the same time, you have to be kind of open-minded and stuff too. So I get that. Is there a process though with, writing a book like The 23rd Hero, where it is all you and you're trying to write it in a way that everyone picks up the information in the same manner, right? Because, for example, if you text someone, they might read it, 10 different ways and interpret it 10 different ways, versus if you call them, they can hear the sound of your voice, they can hear, all those kind of things. So is there a certain mindset you have to kind of get into when you're writing something like that to, convey your message?
Yeah. I think the best thing you can do is to be a part of a writing group or to go to writing workshops, because you get exactly that. You get other people reading your work, carefully reading your work and asking you questions, and you get to hear what they didn't understand, what didn't make sense to them. So much of the book is a response to that feedback. I used to be so afraid of feedback. Like I used to not want any feedback because I wanted to just be perfect And if I got feedback, I just wanted it to be like, it's brilliant, and period, end of sentence. But what I've learned in working on this book is if you're getting good feedback, there's nothing better, because you have that moment of that light bulb, like, aha, good feedback doesn't make you feel bad about yourself. It makes you feel like, aha, and now I can fix that. Yes. And sometimes you have things that are bothering you in the back of your mind, but maybe you weren't ready to look at it, or you didn't know how to fix it. And then someone else can just ask a question. They don't have to solve it for you, but they ask the right question, and suddenly you know how to fix it. And a lot of that, the clarity that in the final version of the book has come from people asking me questions. And sometimes I respond right in the text. There's a question. My character Sloane is my protagonist. She has a perfect memory. This is a big plot point in the book, is her superpower memory. She can remember everything, even from like the day she was born as a baby. And I had a scene where she's meeting her love interest, and there's a line that's sort of like, oh, I can't remember my own name, because she's so enamored with this man who walks in. And one of my readers, a writer friend, said, I thought she could remember everything. And I said, oh, yeah, well, she can, but in this moment. So then I go back and revise, and then it becomes part of the scene. So there's lines like, she could remember, who could remember anything, even her, when faced with such a face. So it improves the writing.
No, that's awesome. Two questions. How do you go about starting to write a book like that, right? Because I'm sure that you can't just start typing and then, because like you're saying, you're all of a sudden you're thinking about the ending, and you got to kind of know where the story goes. So how do you kind of start your process in writing a book?
Yeah, by making mistakes. That's how I started. I had no idea what I was doing, and I spent a good at least 3 months just kind of flailing around on the page and having conversations with characters, just like back and forth, trying to get to know them. And after 3 months of that, I said, I think I need some help, because I don't know where to go from here. So I got a structure book. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Save the Cat screenwriting books. It's Save the Cat. I think Blake Edwards, someone will correct me if that name is wrong. I'm sorry. But Save the Cat books. And they also have Save the Cat writes a novel. Save the Cat writes YA. And I love them because they're not fussy. I'm not, a literary person in the sense that I have my MFA, and I'm more from that theatrical background. So I love that they're not fussy. It's not pretentious. It's fun to read. It's really accessible, but it's really smart, because it tells you, okay, 20% into your story, this has to have happened by now. Halfway through your story, here's where things need to shift somehow. And it's not prescriptive. You have all the freedom in the world, but it gives you just a building blocks and sort of what goes where. It also helps you think about things like, what's this story is about? What's it about? Is this a story about love or overcoming fear? Helps you focus on is there some sort of a deep global, something that all human beings relate to? Help you find that deeper connection. Even if you're writing something like my stories is meant to be a really high octane adventure story. But ultimately it's a story about love. And so that book helped me figure that out.
No, that's awesome. So, but with that, do you create a storyboard, or how do you know that you're 20% in? Because for me, I have high ADD, right? So I would start writing, and all of a sudden I would be halfway through the book and I didn't realize it, because we went off on 10 tangents and had to figure out what they all are, right? So how do you structure your book before you start writing, or do you just start writing on the page and let it rip?
I like to do sort of that book teaches you to do things in beats. So you have sort of these plot points, and I would go on a board, like a digital board, or you could do a whiteboard, and you don't have all the detail, but at the midpoint, they're going to have it's going to be the love scene. That's their first kiss, for example. And at the end of the story, she ends up in Thailand. At the beginning of the story, she's in Vancouver, that sort of a thing. And so we don't know every detail, but we have those, it's sort of like stepping stones to sort of guide us. And what's interesting is that it will change. So you can't hold on to it too tightly, but it gives you sort of just a framework to play within. so like you'll go through and you outline everything, and you just have to be flexible to say, it's okay if this changes. Because in writing the actual scenes, you might realize, oh my God, she's actually a vegetarian. And then you all have all these scenes of her eating hamburgers that are going to have to change. But it gives you some kind of somewhere to focus a little bit. Yeah.
That definitely makes sense. So with you, writing plays, you've written, books, not just one book, but books. Have you ever thought about or had the desire to, write like a screenplay for like a movie?
Yes, and I've written short screenplays. So when I first got out of school, that was my jam. And we would back in the day, this is like pre-TikTok, when it was all about YouTube, and we would friends would get together, actors, producers, writers, and we would create our own content, and we'd go out and we'd shoot it, and all to build up our reels. And it's hard there's so many more actors than there are jobs for actors, and so we're trying to make our own work and put stuff out there. But it's funny because I've had an easier time getting a book published than I ever had getting someone to read my screenplay. So I'd have screenplays, and I wasn't like, I don't know, meeting the right people or not in the right rooms, or I just couldn't kind of break in. But in the publishing world, the nice thing is it's still a long shot, but at least there's a process where you can try. Like you can query and email literary agents, and sometimes, they will write back. So there's just, at least maybe it's changed. I hope it's changed. But I wish there was a process like that. If you have a screenplay, like a legitimate, not like I'm paying you $700 to read my script, more like like in publishing, like you can legitimately query an agent, and sometimes they will like what you did and want to represent you. But I am working on a new project now, and I think it'll make a fantastic romantic comedy, but I'm going to write the novel first before and then hope someone will make it into a movie.
Oh, there you go. I mean, that's always cool when you see like a movie and then you realize it's based off of a book. I mean, that must be an amazing feeling as like an author, that someone was like, this book was so amazing. Like, I know there's not everyone that reads, like people need to know this information. People need to see this story. So that when that does happen, I mean, again, you've already had so many like accolades so far. Like, I think that, that's not out of the picture for you. Oh, right. So yes. Fingers crossed. I believe in you. You just got to keep working. But I mean, look, your book's not even done, or you're not even fully debuted, and it's releasing in August, right? And you're already on your next project. So I mean, it's already on to the next. So that's that entrepreneur, kind of mindset. So how do you feel that, when you've had your plays and stuff in New York, in Los Angeles, in Miami, how did you go about getting those, scripts, shown or seen so that they were able to be, accessed?
Yeah. In New York, I had friends from school who had their own production company. I never got to see when they did it in New York. So they had the script from me, and then they produced it. LA, we had sort of like a weekly, open mic sort of situation night. So like creating material for that and then putting it up in front of everyone and casting it and producing. And Miami's where I went to school. So I was studying theater there. And when I was in school, I could write my own stuff, and I had really good access to great actors and great spaces to put work up. And then recently coming back to that, I've been super fortunate because just coming back after many years away, found a theatrical home here in Milwaukee who just produced my first full-length play this past spring. And then it's also going to be produced in Texas in the fall, which I'm very spoiled. And people are telling me, that's like pretty hard, right? And I was like, oh, like it's hard. It reminds me of Elwood's. But no, it's hard. It's really hard. And I wish I had kind of started earlier and stuck with it and had more material, because like, that's it. That's all I got, just the one. So I probably need to get to work on something else.
No, but I mean, that is hard. I mean, from what it sounds like, I mean, that's not something that everyone can do. And I mean, you've already had other ones shown, and this one might be that breakthrough moment where people are like, okay, well, where's the next one? Like, yeah, we want more, right? So who knows? You might be, handling 2 projects at once after this one gets, shown. So that's awesome. What are some of the things that you've had to deal with within your own, belief system on like limiting beliefs and overcoming those limiting beliefs?
Yeah, I think I just never know. I never know if something is good because I never know if people tell me something is good if they really mean it. Whereas if people tell me something's bad, I always believe that, which is ridiculous, right? And so I'm kind of learning that all I can do, I feel like at the end of the day, I'm only in charge of the effort and the time. I can't be in charge of the perceived quality because I am, we're all just a filter, right? So I can never be a writer like anyone else. Like it's going to come out of here and it's going to be what it is. Like my stuff, like it's rom-com, it's humor. I'm not going to write like the great American Pulitzer novel, although there's been some humor. That's one novel or one Pulitzer's. But anyway, my point is that I can't be different than I am. And I can't make someone else like it or say it's good. And what I've learned to do is ask myself, am I happy with it? Is it the best I could do? Do I like it? And to let my opinion of the work have a vote. I used to not do that. I used to not care what I thought, and everybody else's opinion mattered more than mine. And at the end of the day, we can't really know another person. They could be saying it's great just because they want to be kind to me, or they're just blowing smoke, or maybe they do really mean it, but I don't know. I'll never know. So I can't base the value of the work on that. For this book, I think to go from having absolutely no experience to it's about 5 years later. It took a long time to learn how to do what I was doing, and it's definitely imperfect. But when I was just listening to the audio book, we just finished recording that, and I like it. And so some people already I know do not. I got my nice 1 stars on Goodreads, but I like it, and so that's all I can do.
I mean, that's, like you said, that's all you can do. And I mean, you're going to be happy and proud of your work because it's something that you wanted to do. And if you try to be like another writer, then it's going to almost look like, you're a sheep, and then you're going to get lost in the herd, and you're just the next author out there, right? But when you're you and you stay true to yourself, then that's when you start to really stand out and flourish, right? In your creative zone of genius, right? I know one of the big topics that, you're about is, finding love in relationships in that relation. And that basically you don't need to look for love in a relationship, but you need to look for love in yourself first. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, that's sort of the whole journey of this story. This woman, she's just from the earliest age feels just ashamed of who she is. She's got this memory, and she was taught that it's a deep flaw that should be hidden from the world. And her story is about not just accepting who she is, but learning to find that love within herself, that it doesn't require an outside source. It doesn't go away if a person goes away. And so it's about learning that we don't need to get love from anyone else. I think that's not the way that love, that's not the nature of love, right? We all have it. That's what we're made of. And there's stuff that can get in the way. There's stuff that can make us blind to it. There's stuff that can make it hard to receive and give. But ultimately, no one else can give you that. That's something that that's our birthright, I think.
No, definitely. And I think that, for me, it's one of those things where if you can't love yourself, how can you expect other people to show you that love? If you can't respect yourself, if you can't, all those things, it has to start within self first, right? And then that confidence or that is shown to others, and they, kind of follow suit in that. But in your opinion, what do you think that leads people to search for love in relationships before finding love in themselves?
Right. Well, I think we're sort of conditioned to do that, right? It's like we grow up with all of these images, film, media, whatever, about, we see people getting married on the beach and now they're happy, or they get more money and now they're happy. And when you have, you fall in love, or you have some success, or you finally make some money, if things, you achieve some dreams, you quickly realize, like, if you have an emotional high from any of that, it is very short-lived. And then you're on to the next, well, how else can I get that hit of happiness or that hit of love? And so that's not the real stuff. That's the cheaper, the fleeting stuff. And that's not real love. The real stuff is it's like a joy that comes from inside. Nothing outside, nothing out here can take it away. And it's not like caused by something that happened to you. I feel like it's not caused by an event. It's something that kind of like it's bubbling up and it's there for no reason at all. Cause it's like our nature. And I think like for me, I think what I'm here to learn is all about getting rid of those barriers.
No, I think that's awesome. That's an amazing perspective. I agree. And I think it's not something that you should be searching for, even within yourself or on the outside, where it does come in waves, right? Love isn't something that should be almost like an adrenaline rush, right?
Mm-hmm.
It may happen, but at the same time, you should always know that there's that foundation of it within self and, from the people around you. But it's something, and at least in my opinion, I think love is something that grows, right? So it's something for yourself, it's something that is practiced, right? You have to practice the skill of loving yourself, especially when there's so many outside influences, and that love within yourself will grow over time and it will thicken, and then it will be unbreakable. And then with, even relationships, friendships, all that kind of stuff, like you don't just meet someone and all of a sudden you love them, right? So they're not going to love you right away, or at least they shouldn't. If you do, then you might have a stalker, but it's one of those things where, again, relationships, all of a sudden, it's not one event that you find love, like you said. Love builds over time. It's that respect. It's that, everything that other person gives you. But again, it starts within self before that could ever happen and be a true, strong relationship. So I think that's awesome. And your mindset behind that is amazing. Can you give a little more on like what's your next project coming out? Because I know this is the book, and the next one's a book as well, right?
Yeah, a novel. It's a romantic comedy. I don't know if I have a good elevator pitch yet, but it's it's kind of the same story. It's about a woman who's turning 40, and she's a matchmaker who can make matches for everyone but herself. And she has it in her mind that if she doesn't meet the right guy this summer, she's going to be alone forever. Her life is over. So it's like sort of the hijinks about her trying to find the right person, like on a clock. And it's funny though, because it's the same story. I have a friend that there's a very famous quote about this, that like all writers are writing the same story over and over. And I see this in my friends' work too. I used to resist it. I was afraid that I was going to write the same book again. And my friend told me, she's like, well, you are. That's what we all do. Right. So like we see themes, like she has a lot of themes around like economic inequality in her work. And that's just sort of like her core thing she's exploring as an artist. And I think mine is about self-love. And so the characters have different names, and like, it takes place in a different location. And but the story is the same. It's about someone learning that they're to accept themselves, learning to trust themselves, learning to listen to that inner voice and not let the world tell you what you are.
No, I think that is true, right? Like authors, even, screenwriters, like even let's say movies, right? You watch an action movie, you already know there's going to be a general plot, right? But we still watch the next one, right? For example, Fast and the Furious, they have 10 of them, and we still watch them because they're great movies. You want to know what happens in between the beginning and end. So I think that your zone of creativeness is that, self-development, self-love and learning lessons within. But again, there's so many different ways you can twist and turn the story that people are still going to be engaged. And then it's a little lesson. So like your next project, kind of sounds like the same paradox of, King Solomon, gives the best advice to everyone, but basically makes the worst decisions himself. Like, which is, people don't realize that, but everyone does that. Like, me in the fitness space, like it's easy to give someone the advice, but when you give yourself the advice, like you also start talking yourself out of it in your own head. Right. So I think that's an amazing message. And I think that one will be an amazing, book as well. So that's awesome. So before we wrap up though, I like to ask one hypothetical question, right?
It's fun.
Let's say everything that you've accomplished is gone, right? You have one legacy message, right, that it gets to get left on basically a tombstone, a wall, right? Just basically this is, Rebecca's, legacy message. What would that message be from your journey this far?
It's going to get better. It's all going to be okay. I think in the end, we just love and whatever your God is in your mind, whatever that means to you is so, Elizabeth Gilbert says, God is so big you can't miss. So I think we all walk around just terrified all day, every day, and so worried about what's going to happen in the future. And, we're always just here now. And even when we get to the future, it'll be now again. And so I think it's all going to be all right. And all you ever have to do is right now.
I like that. That's awesome. Well, where can people connect with you? Where can people, learn more about the works that you've published and get their hands on the 23rd Hero?
Yes. You can grab the book, The 23rd Hero. You can pre-order now, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you get your books. You can go to your favorite indie bookstore. They can order it for you. I'm at RebeccaAnnNguyen.com. So my full name, you can Google me, or at Rebecca N. Writes, WRITES. That's my handle on the socials.
Well, that's awesome. I'll definitely tag your information in the show notes. So guys, make sure that you grab yourself a copy of the 23rd Hero and stay tuned with, all the work that she's doing, because I guarantee that her books are going to be published into a movie sooner or later. But thank you so much for coming on today, Rebecca. My
pleasure. Thanks, Devin. This has been great.
Well, I'll definitely keep my eye out to see that next book as well. But I can't wait to, I know you sent over the 23rd Hero, so I'm going to be diving into that as well. Thank you so much.
No negative vibes, only positive thoughts. Cause in the game of life, mindset calls the shots. Got my mind on the prize, I can't be distracted. I stay on my grind, no time to be slacking. I hustle hard, I go against the current. Cause I know my